Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Mailbag, the mailbag installment of what we do here on AMC Movie News. My name is John Campy. I'm the editor-in-chief of AMC Movie News. You might tell, wait, guys, what's that hanging about? Come on, guys. This isn't hockey talk. This isn't Team Canada wins gold yet again talk. This is AMC Movie. I have no idea how they got there. Somebody must have left it out. My name is John Cabe, editor-in-chief, as I said, of AMC Movie News. Thanks for joining us here today. Mailbag's a little late getting up today because I stayed awake I had a choice to make, stay awake until 4 a.m. for the gold medal hockey game or try to wake up that early to watch it. And me and some buddies were up watching UFC last night, so I decided to stay up. Went to bed at 7 a.m. and slept for a few hours. Now I'm up doing AMC Movie Talk. Thanks a lot for joining us today. Now, on Monday through Friday, we do AMC Movie Talk, and that's when we talk about all the latest movie news. But on the weekends, we like to do Mailbag because you guys send us in like 200 questions a day. And we like to take some time to address a whole bunch of them on the weekends, and that's why we've got Mailbag. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the first question today. And the first question today comes to us from Sash Nixon, who writes, now that Joss Whedon is practically printing his own money at Marvel, do you think he will ever use his newfound powers to revisit the Serenity crew on the big screen and do a sequel? Or will he be so wrapped up in the superhero shenanigans that Fillion and co. will be too old by the time that it's feasible? Well, for the few of you out there who don't know what he's talking about, Serenity is the movie version of the beloved cult favorite show Firefly, which is awesome. Only lasted one season, unfortunately. And then they did the movie Serenity. And Serenity, to me, one of the best pure sci-fi movies of the past decade. I really, really like Serenity an awful lot. Now, the problem is that nobody went to go see Serenity, which is a bit of a problem. But so he's asking, now that Joss Whedon has all this popularity, he's riding high, he'll never probably be more powerful in the film industry than he is right now. Do we think there's a chance he can actually go and revisit the Serenity franchise? And I'm going to have to go ahead and say no. I don't think we're going to see Joss Whedon revisit the Serenity franchise. And there's probably a couple reasons for that.
If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up.
I don't know how that got up there. That was weird. So do I think he could go back? I don't think so. I don't think there's really much of a chance of him going back and revisiting Serenity for a couple of reasons. First and foremost is the fact that Serenity made no money. I think it cost about $35 million to make. That's what the production budget was. And it only made like $38 million worldwide. And once again, those who watch the show know that that's not how the math works. You got to take the production budget, but then you add about $20 million for the marketing. And then you got to take the money it made at the box office, but you actually got to subtract 30% of that because, movie theaters get to keep a little bit of the box office. And so Serenity probably ended up losing the studio, which was Universal, I believe, losing the studio probably about $20 million when it's all said and done. So it didn't make a lot of money. And therefore, it's not really a question about whether Joss Whedon would like to go back and make another Serenity film. The real question is, would there be a studio that would be willing to finance another Serenity film? And the answer to that is no. Now, this brings up a couple of arguments. One is, there's this argument I get from people all the time. Like I say, such and such was never popular enough to be a movie. And some people say, but John, it's achieved such a cult classic status. People have found it on home video after it went off air. And now millions and millions of people love it. Now you can make a movie about it. And we're not just talking about Serenity. We're talking about a lot of other properties. And Serenity is a good example of how that's not the case. Because there was this theory and this philosophy going around that when Fox canceled Firefly, that the swoon of support came up behind Firefly. You had all the brown coats, everybody, and that the popularity of it just went through the roof because now people were sharing it with each other. Now it was going off air and they tried to save it. So Universal thought, well, now that this property has this amazing groundswell of cult classic and it's achieved millions of new fans, we can make a movie about it and it'll make a ton of money. And it didn't. It just didn't. There's this myth that goes around, and really 99% of the time it's just a myth, that something that failed has now achieved such a huge following that now it would be a guaranteed success. Not true. And I think Serenity is a good example of that, not true. But the other thing that it brings up is this notion that Joss Whedon can do anything he wants now, and a studio should back it because Joss Whedon's so popular now, whatever he makes is sure to be a big blockbuster. Well, it's not really the case. I mean, Whedon did this film, this passion project of his. It's just a small film called Much Ado About Nothing. And he got a lot of his Buffy cast and a couple of his Firefly and Serenity cast. And he got all these people together that are cult favorites. And the movie made $4 million at the box office. $4 million. Now, a lot of people will say, but John, it was a limited release. And it was a limited release, but it was on like 250 theaters, which means wherever you lived in the U.S., if you wanted to see Much Ado About Nothing, you could have seen it because it was in every market. Not in 20 theaters in every market, but not a lot of people went to go see it. And made $4 million. And so the studios know, as awesome as Joss Whedon is, that just because something is a Joss Whedon made film, that doesn't mean people are going to flock out to see it in the hundreds of millions. And so when they're looking at something like Serenity that lost money before, got canceled early, exposed the myth of this, if you make it now, everybody will watch it. Well, that kind of got debunked. Then you can kind of see why I would say, look, would I want a Serenity movie? You're damn right I would want a Serenity 2. Damn right I want a Serenity 2. The first one was just so good. These characters are so rich. There's so many different things they can do with the story now. Whether they follow the graphic novel sequels or not, doesn't matter. I would love to see it, but I just don't think it's going to happen. So anyway, let's move on to question number 2. Question number 2 comes to us from Alex Wolfe, who writes, "Hey guys, huge fan of the show. I was going to see what your thoughts were about the potential sequel to the 2010 movie Takers. I was a huge fan of the first one and had heard rumors that a prequel showing their 2004 heist may happen eventually. I thought T.I. did a fantastic job as Ghost, and the movie made a pretty good amount of money. A lot of people believe that it was the best movie that came out that summer. Do you guys think that Paul Walker's death will have any influence over a second movie? What are your thoughts?" Well, but Paul Walker's passing really has no influence on Takers 2 because there was never going to be a Takers 2. Now, just before Takers 1 came out, wife beater, woman beater. Chris Brown. Chris Brown put out a statement saying, "Hey, I'm talking the studio into writing a Takers 2," and Michael Ealy and I think one of the other cast members kind of started saying, "Hey, yeah, maybe it would be cool to do this prequel idea, see how this group came together." But there was the studio never went anywhere with it. It was never in the pipe. As far as I know, never happened. And it didn't make money. It actually lost money. $32 million production budget. It made $69 million worldwide. But once again, you had $25 million for marketing on top of that production budget. Suddenly now it is a $57 million film. Then you take that $69 million it made, you subtract about $25 million for the studios, take the 30%, and then you got to subtract producers, points off of it, and there's other things you got to subtract, and Takers lost money. On top of that, I mean, I think it's great if you liked it, and that's awesome if you liked it. There's nothing better than loving a movie. But the fact of the matter is not many people liked it. It held a 28% rating, and that's not very good. I didn't like it. Nobody I know likes it. Which is funny because the cast is really quite good, aside from the woman beater. You had Michael Ealy, you had Paul Walker, you had Idris Elba, you had Hayden Christensen, Yeah, it's a pretty good cast, actually. And I was quite intrigued by it, but then I went to go see it. And for me personally, I was kind of let down by it. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't think it was very good. But just because I didn't think it was very good doesn't mean you shouldn't love it. And I'm glad that you did. But all those things put together spelled that there was never going to be a Takers 2. Look, if the first Takers came out and it made $200 million, then we'd be talking sequel. But the film lost money. It wasn't that well received. And that pretty much kills any idea of there being a Takers 2. I mean, maybe some direct-to-home video things someday, but I don't think it's going to happen. All right, the next question today comes to us from Anton Reese, who writes, "Hi, AMC, love the show. I don't know if you answered this already, but I always wanted to know what happened to Edward Norton in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I look around for a definitive answer, but none have given me any straight answers. I figured John, John, by the way, I figured John would be the best to answer. Thanks." Well, thanks for the question, Anton. Yeah, the Edward Norton Hulk situation is one of the great stories around Hollywood. So let me give you the rundown as best as I know. Please keep in mind, I've never sat down and talked with Edward Norton about this topic, so I don't really know. And I am an extra in that movie, and I was around set of that movie for about 5 days. But I honestly, so anything I'm about to tell you is all the stuff from what I understand from the people I've talked to. Okay, so this is not me talking to Edward Norton because I never did about this. So let me be clear about that. But basically what it looks like what happened was Edward Norton, when Marvel approached him about being in the new Hulk film, Edward Norton wanted to have some control over the script. And so the studio said, sure, go ahead. And he basically did kind of a page one rewrite of Zach Penn's script that they had already had. And he added a whole bunch of material and added a bunch of dialogue and a little more background to it and things like that. And then they went off and made the movie. And the director of the movie was Louis Leterrier. And they went ahead and they made the movie. And then they put together what they call the suicide cut. And the reason they call it suicide cut is that it's just after production's done, they just rapidly just throw something together that's kind of a progression of the movie. And they say it's usually so bad you want to commit suicide. That's why they call it a suicide cut. Anyway, Leterrier tells the story about how they watched the cut and the studio saw it. And the studio decided that what they were going for was too long. They wanted to cut it down. And they basically edited out, if I understand it properly, they edited out a lot of the stuff that Edward Norton put into the script. And then when Edward Norton also wanted a writing credit on the movie since he did so much work on the script. So it went to the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, who have a formula for assessing who gets credit on a script. And basically the way the WGA worked it out was that Edward Norton didn't qualify for writing credit on the script, which seems really weird because he did a lot of work on it. But be that as it may, had nothing to do with the studio. So anyway, then Edward Norton got pretty upset about the cuts that were made in the film. And he never had final cut of the movie. Edward Norton never had final cut rights to the movie. He just had the rights to work on the script. It's the studio's movie. They decided to edit it down. And one of the big things was they shortened up the beginning. Edward Norton wanted the beginning to be a little bit longer to give more background. But the studio felt that if they left Edward Norton's stuff in at the beginning of the movie, then the Hulk wouldn't appear in the movie until about 30 minutes into the movie. And the studio felt, look, they already had a Hulk film. Audiences want to see the Hulk. We shouldn't make them wait a half hour to see the Hulk. It would be different if this was the first Hulk movie ever, but they've already had the Ang Lee Hulk film. Now we're giving them a new Hulk film, and the movie's called The Incredible Hulk. We shouldn't make them wait a half hour to see the Hulk. So they made some cuts there, and they cut out a whole bunch of his other stuff. And then apparently he was so upset by it that he dropped out of a lot of the marketing of the film. Now he did show up. Edward Norton did show up to the premiere, to one or two of the premieres, but not all of them. He did a couple of interviews, but he never did the full press thing. And reportedly it was because he was so upset by the way everything went down, not getting the writing credit, the fact that they edited the film, all that kind of stuff. And I think to Marvel that made him difficult to work with. And Marvel decided when they were getting things together for the Avengers movie, I think all things being equal, they would have wanted Edward Norton in the Avengers movie. I think the original plan was to do The Incredible Hulk with Norton and then do Avengers with him as well. But they just decided their relationship was too strained, and they thought Edward was too much trouble than he was worth at the time. Not that I agree. And they decided to move forward without Edward Norton. And to the best of my knowledge, that is what went down. So you may read some different versions here and there, but I think generally speaking, that's the gist of it. So I hope that gives a little bit of background on that. All right, let's move on to question number 4. And question number 4 today comes to us. I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name. Cheney Bunsey writes, in light of Michael B. Jordan being cast as Johnny Storm in the new Fantastic Four reboot, do you think that the producers and casting directors always wanted to cast a black Johnny Storm? Or did they just want Michael B. Jordan specifically for the role, as he is a hot property right now and proving to be a great actor in the making? Thanks a lot for the question. Here's the thing. Michael B. Jordan is really recognized as a huge talent right now, but it's not like Michael B. Jordan right now is a big box office draw. He's one of the top young acting talents in Hollywood today. He's wonderful. But that being said, it's not like he's a huge box office draw, which is really something the studios would be concerned with. I always believe that you don't change the movie to fit the actor. You come up with your characters and your story, and then you go out and get the actor that best suits your character and best suits your actor. The character does not serve the actor serves the character. So with that being said, and I'm sure there are exceptions that studios have made over the years, no doubt, but I'm just saying generally speaking. I have no doubt that the studio decided well in advance they wanted to try something a little bit different, and they wanted to try Black Johnny Storm. Like I said before, I got no problem with that because it doesn't really change anything about the Johnny Storm character. And so I believe that they decided they wanted a Black Johnny Storm first, and then having decided they wanted a Black Human Torch, they then looked around at who was available, and then they chose Michael B. Jordan. So I believe that's the way it kind of worked out. All right, question number 5 comes to us from Stu Hendo, who writes, "Hey AMC, I live in Australia, and when the first Lego movie trailer was released, I couldn't wait to see it. But in Australia, it doesn't get released until the start of April. This makes me want to pirate the movie because I can't have access to it legally. I understand if it takes a week or two to get it to different countries, but over 2 months is ridiculous. Why is it like this for some movies? Honestly, every studio has its own release strategy for its own movies to coincide with this and coincide with this and that, and it's very intricate. But sometimes I think studios outthink themselves and they overthink things. Because you're right, Stu. This is a problem. I've been talking about this for years, actually, about this staggered release date. I believe a movie should be released worldwide same day, with some exceptions because you want to coordinate it with certain things. But 2 months wait. Look, this isn't 1980, where the world as a whole was still mostly isolated from each other. We live in the internet era. And in Australia, everything that's happening here is practically happening there because everybody can see it online. They see the trailers, they see the reviews, they know what's happening. And to make a country like Australia or others have to wait a month or 2 months when they see a movie coming out, they hear all this great buzz about it, but there's no legal way for them to go see it. It encourages piracy. It does. The biggest thing the music industry ever did to fight piracy was making their deal with iTunes. Because when what basically iTunes said was, hey, look, the vast majority of people aren't dirty thieves. The vast majority of people are willing to pay a fair price for content that they want easily and very accessible. So they made songs available for 99 cents at the time. And a lot of experts point to that as one of the biggest reasons that, music piracy started to wane. Why music piracy started to decline, because now they were giving everybody the access to get the content they wanted at a fair and reasonable price easily. You're encouraging piracy, I believe, when you release a movie like Lego that everybody in Australia is seeing on the internet, that here's the premiere, and here's all the great reviews, and here are these marvelous trailers. Oh, but you don't get to watch it. We're not going to give you a legal way to buy a movie ticket and go into the theater and watch it right now. You got to wait for 2 months. And to me, that's dumb. And it encourages piracy. And I think if you really want to take a strike at piracy, especially internationally, you make the movies available internationally as soon as possible. I mean, it is kind of crazy, and I completely sympathize with what you're talking about, Stu. All right, let's move on to question number 6. And question number 6 comes to us from Brian H. And Brian H. writes, "Hi guys, I'm a huge fan of the show, but I was wondering, I heard that they greenlit a Tintin sequel years ago, but there's been no word of it as of then. Do you think it's still in production after it did all right at the US?" Yeah, they're still going to make Tintin 2. And it's not that it was greenlit after Tintin. Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson, when they started out with the Tintin project, I think they said they were going to make 3 movies. And Steven Spielberg directed the first one. Peter Jackson was going to direct the second one. The problem is, at the time that they were making all these plans, Peter Jackson wasn't going to be directing the Hobbit films. Guillermo del Toro was going to be directing the Hobbit films. Well, that all changed. Peter Jackson ended up directing the Hobbit films, and he's still tied up with the Hobbit. So the original release date for the second Tintin was in 2015. However, that has been pushed back until whenever. However, actor Jamie Bell, who I believe did the voice of Tintin, and he's the new Ben Grimm, the Thing, in the new Fantastic Four. Jamie Bell was recently interviewed, and he said that he had just spoken to Steven Spielberg, and that Spielberg said, yeah, we're still going to do it. We're just waiting for Peter to finish everything that he's working on. He said, we're writing a script, and he's still working on it. So I guess that means it's not carved in stone that a Tintin 2 is coming, but that's why we haven't seen it yet, and that their plan is still to do it, and Peter Jackson will direct it. Look at the earliest, though, probably a late 2016, maybe even 2017. Their plan is to do it. It may not work out, but they are still moving ahead with it at this point, so you should see a Tintin 2 pretty soon. And, saying it did all right, yeah, it only made $77 million. The first Tintin only made $77 million at the North American box office, but it made like almost $375 million on the worldwide box office, so it did just fine. It did okay. So finances were not a problem for a Tintin sequel. It's all about Peter Jackson's schedule because of The Hobbit. All right, let's move on to question number 7. And question number 7 today comes to us from Leonard Hawley, who writes, which movie did you enjoy watching the most? Frozen or the aforementioned The Lego Movie? Man, that's a good question. Frozen and The Lego Movie are 2 very different films, and that I enjoyed both immensely. I expected to like The Lego Movie a lot. I didn't expect to love Frozen. To me, Frozen just on the surface looked like a throwaway Disney film, to be honest. And then I went to go see it, and I was just in awe. I thought it was a beautiful film. The music is fantastic. It's very charming. I enjoyed it a great deal. The Lego Movie is a much more frantic film, much more comedy-based, very different film. And I love them both, but if you're going to put me on the spot and ask me which one did I enjoy most, I'm going to say I enjoyed Lego a little bit better. Because Lego, almost the whole time, I mean, there's so many jokes and so much funny stuff, and it happens at such an incredible frantic pace that the whole time I'm watching the Lego Movie, my face was like this. And I'm just loving every single second of it, It's just so purely entertaining. Frozen is awesome, and I will not argue with anybody who prefers Frozen over Lego. You won't get an argument out of me. But just for me personally, Lego was just a little bit more entertaining for me. All right, let's move on to question number 8. And question number 8 today comes to us from Jennifer Mathis, who writes, I've always been intrigued about a Top Gun remake, not a sequel. And I wonder if one was ever made, would you support it? What would you change from the original besides better graphics and updated technology? Who would you cast? Well, Jennifer, I'm never against remakes, ever. I remake a movie, remake every movie. I don't care. Because, like I said, I don't understand anybody's objection. Nobody has given me a rational, legitimate, quantifiable objection about why they shouldn't do remakes. If a studio thinks they can make a remake that they think they can make pretty good, and they think audiences want to go see and will go to see, why not? No one's given me a good argument yet about why they shouldn't. Because it's not like when they remade, let's say Old Boy, Spike Lee's, that might, one of the worst films I've seen in the past year or two. The Old Boy remake, fine. Spike Lee does a remake. Josh is, they get Josh, I can't remember Josh's last name now. Anyway, so they do this remake, and I'm going to actually look up the producer again because I forgot who the producer is. But they go ahead and do this remake of Old Boy, and Old Boy is a beloved foreign film that people who have seen it love it, and it's Josh Brolin. And why did I forgot Brolin's last name? I have no idea. Elizabeth Olsen, Sharlto Copley's in it. Actually, Sharlto Copley I think was pretty creepy, and I think he was really good. But it was one of the most horrendous films ever. But guess what? The original Old Boy, the Blu-rays and the DVDs of the original Old Boy that are sitting on everybody's shelves, it didn't magically disappear when they made a remake. As a matter of fact, much like The Departed was a remake of Infernal Affairs, and The Departed won Best Picture at the Oscar and got Martin Scorsese his first Best Director Oscar, by the way. So don't tell me they shouldn't have remade Infernal Affairs. Anyway, like Infernal Affairs with The Departed, I already know a bunch of people who, after seeing this terrible version of Old Boy, were intrigued to go and check out the original version of Old Boy, which they never would have done without a remake. And now they've seen the original version of Old Boy and they love it. So once again, I've never heard a single legitimate argument why you should not remake a film. It doesn't do anything to the original. If nothing else, it will turn people onto the original. And for people who say, oh, it'll turn people off of the original, those people weren't going to see the original anyway. So, I mean, there's no downside. Anyway, what about Top Gun? I think Top Gun, a remake of Top Gun today, is challenging because we live in a different era. So doing a remake of Top Gun would be challenging. But Paramount has plans to make a Top Gun sequel. Jerry Bruckheimer recently left, the super mega producer. He recently left Disney, and now he signed a deal with Paramount Pictures. And when he signed that deal back in December, it was announced that the first two things on their plate, working with Jerry Bruckheimer, was a Beverly Hills Cop. I don't know if it's going to be a reboot or a sequel, but the other was a sequel to Top Gun. And apparently Tom Cruise, the reports are that he's up for coming back to play Maverick again. So they are looking at doing a Top Gun 2. Now, I haven't heard any news since December, but it's only been a couple of months, about how they're progressing on developing a Top Gun sequel, but that is the plan. So the plan right now is not a remake. The plan is a sequel. So keep your eyes open for that. Anyway, folks, that'll do it for me today. I've run all out of questions. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget, lots of great movies playing in AMC theaters right now. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and movie ticket information. And for heaven's sakes, if you haven't done so yet, take a second and click on the subscribe button. Become a subscriber to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. Keep you up to date on everything going on in the world of movie news, including our Monday through Friday AMC Movie Talk show, and of course, our weekend AMC Mailbag show. So thanks so much for joining us. My name is John Campia for AMC Movie News, and until next time, bye-bye.